you seriously trying to Peggy? All right.
Good morning, and welcome to First Presbyterian Church, Elizabethton. This morning's service is recorded and live stream broadcast on our church's YouTube channel, which can be found at fpcelizabethton.org.
Gregor's waiting on the light. He's so excited he can't wait.
In the name of the God who created us, in the name of the Christ who teaches us, in the name of the Spirit who journeys alongside us throughout our lives, welcome home, children of God. Peace be with you. Good morning and welcome to First Presbyterian Church as we gather together this morning as God's people in God's name. It is good to be here this morning. I welcome all of you here, whether you're joining us in person or online. Thanks for being a part of the worship service this morning. If you're online, would you please sign in on the YouTube chat? If you're here, if you'd please sign in on those friendship pads. Today's Everyone Counts offering. It's the first Sunday of the month again, so loaves and fishes. It's the feeding ministry providing hot meals to folks throughout Carter County most nights of the week, in addition to an offering going to them from our attendance today. Not this Friday, but next Friday is our casserole brigade, and I don't see Julia here this morning, unless I'm missing. So Julia's not here this morning, but we'll be collecting casseroles for that, so we can almost always use some more of those if you're able to help provide one. Please let Julia know. We'll remind you next week, because usually it's the first, well, it's always the second Friday of the month, right? So anyway, yeah, we'll hear about that next week. We got a lot of exciting things. Oh, there's Julia. As I give her a heart attack walking in. We're all applauding. I was wondering how our casserole brigade's coming along. Do we still need some for the following Friday? I know. Just today's our loaves and fishes, so let Julia back there know if you can help with the casserole. Thanks, Julia. And we are glad you're here, so we'll applaud for your entrance. A lot of things happening this month. Downstairs, Adult Forum, 9:45 to 10:45 each Sunday. Our Religion and Science began as Evolution Sunday years ago from Dr. Julie Wade. Kind of started this, and it has grown. This morning, Brian Dennison educated us all on quantum mechanics and some fascinating light experiments we got to see. He's going to talk next Sunday, then I think Rain Price on the third Sunday, Jeff Wardeska on the fourth. It's going to be a fascinating month. By all means, join us online or in person if you can attend that. Fridays, all throughout this month, free lectures at Tusculum University. This is their annual theologian in residence. Dr. Ramy Marcos is the pastor at Irwin Presbyterian Church. He is talking about Christianity and interreligious dialogue in the Middle East. Fascinating. So if at all possible, go hear Ramy lecturing on Fridays at Tusculum, and those are free to attend. On Saturday, the 15th here, Dr. Jennifer Adler from ETSU is going to be doing a workshop on religion in Appalachia. Again, that is free. There's a registration link on our website just so we can get a head count of that, but I hope you'll consider joining for that. Come hear Dr. Adler share some of her work with us. Next Sunday after church is our annual regular second Sunday benediction. We've got a celebrity joining us next Sunday, a best-selling author, Aubrey Abernethy, who had a book published in December and is going to have those available and share a little bit, plus coffee, snacks, and a chance to visit. So plan to stick around next Sunday if you can. Two other things. First, Leah, did I hear right? You got a year older today? A day older. Well, today is your birthday, isn't it? So happy birthday to Leah. Happy to you. To you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to Leah. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you, Leah. As we join with Leah in celebrating, we also have a little... Right, well, that's fair, yes. Also, a little bit of sad news today. This is Emmeline's last Sunday with us. We will miss you dearly, Emmeline, but thank you so much for sharing your beautiful voice, talents, and lovely spirit with us for this period. Maybe we can get her back on occasion, but what church are you headed to? State Street United Methodist, so. But sincerely, thank you for sharing all of your beautiful voice and wonderful personality with us. We wish you well and we'll miss you dearly. So, thank you. Any other joys, concerns, announcements, anything to share? All right, then we will continue in our worship as we do every Sunday by celebrating the gospel around which we gather, and that is that God loves every one of us and all people everywhere around the world without condition and without exception, because in our unique and beautiful diversity, every single one of us is a reflection of God's image. Lesbian, gay, bi, trans, queer, straight, male, female, non-binary, black, brown, white, Asian, indigenous, looking for wisdom and spiritual insight in Christianity, other religious traditions, the world around us, science, as we talked about this morning. God's love welcomes and embraces all people, rich and old. Wait, no, I'm sorry. Okay, rich and poor, young and old, able-bodied and disabled, suffering and rejoicing. It come to me. Everybody, everywhere, without condition, without exception. So welcome, God's beloved community. We give thanks this morning for this ancestral Cherokee land on which we are gathered, for the loving waters of the Watauga and the Doe River watersheds that nourish us. We commit ourselves again every week anew to work for truth and reconciliation among all people, to respect everybody and love everybody in God's creation in all we say and do. So let's worship together.
One more joy. Today is Megan's anniversary, 5 years with our choir in our church.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to read now. That's not my specialty, but I'll try it. All right, this is from Sabbath Poem 7 by Wendell Berry. The clearing rests in song and shade. It is a creature made by old light held in soil and leaf, by human joy and grief, by human work, fidelity of sight and stroke, by rain, by water on the parent stone. We will join our work to heaven's gift, our hope to what is left, that field and woods at last agree in an economy of widest worth. High heaven's kingdom come on earth. Imagine paradise, O dust arise. If you will join us in singing hymn 369, brethren, we have met to worship.
And just a correction, there was,
You're right.
it's 396. You're welcome.
Thanks.
So, rise and body and spirit as you're able to sing together.
Power
I don't have my hearing aids.
Good morning. It's wonderful to be back home. I missed you guys. I don't know if this happens to you, but I'll have a realization or some awareness that makes my life a little simpler, and the next day I'm going, what was that? What was that thing? So I'm going to offer one of those to you today that has stuck. And it is a phrase, "This is how it is right now." And it was offered to me as part of a Buddhist teaching. And I'll be using it today in our meditation, and invite you to see if you can take it home with you. So if you'll just kind of shuffle around in your seat, find that place. I like to think of it as letting my body know this is a different time. Bringing your feet to the floor, softening whatever you can soften. And find a way into following your breath. You're already breathing. No need to do anything new. And I want to assure you, you will have thoughts. And I want to invite you to use those times when you catch yourself thinking to turn back to the divine, to turn back to the silence. So it's one more opportunity to be still. Settle in with your breath. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to notice all the places that our body is feeling touch right now. Your feet on the floor, your bottom on the pew, maybe your hands on your legs. Just breathe into that feeling. Notice what part of your body is in contact with the pew. You might check inside your mouth, see how your tongue is feeling. Is it stiff or is it soft? I've got a waistband I can feel. And the shoes on my feet. Breathing into what your sense of touch is telling you. This is how it is right now. Now we're going to use our sense of hearing and see what sounds you can find in the room. A gentle voice. Movement, air. Breathing into those sounds. This is how it is right now. The next one might be a little bit more, require a little bit more attention. We'll breathe with our sense of smell. What can you smell right now? Maybe that's not anything. This is how it is right now. Next, we'll use our sense of taste. Feel free to move your tongue around your mouth. Maybe there's a little bit of breakfast or coffee, toothpaste. See if you can use your imagination to taste. This is how it is right now. For our sense of sight, we're not going to pop our eyes wide open. Well, I guess you can. We receive like 96% of all of our sensory information from our eyes. So I'm going to ask you just to gently open your eyes as if you're peeping through your eyelashes. And focus on those items that come into your view. Slowly let your eyes close and think about that image. Breathing with whatever things around you that you saw. This is how it is right now. You might imagine a time earlier today when you had thoughts that came with anxiety, or thoughts that came with disappointment. And as we sit with our senses, we can see those thoughts simply as thoughts. Our senses tell us this is how it is right now. releasing the thoughts, the opinions, the emotions. Returning to the peace of our breathing. The breath of God, the breath of life. The breath of love. This is how it is right now. So be it.
Our reading today comes from Matthew chapter 12. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God and ate the bread of the presence, which it was not lawful for him or his companions to eat, but only for the priest. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and yet are guiltless? I tell you, something greater than the temple is here." He left that place and entered their synagogue. A man was there with a withered hand, and they asked him, "Is it lawful to cure on the Sabbath?" so that they might accuse him. He said to them, "Suppose one of you has only one sheep, and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath. Will you not lay hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a human being than a sheep? So it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and it was restored, as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and conspired against him, how to destroy him.
Named To a Wild
coming back in? Yeah. Oh, there we go. Rebecca, thank you for our meditation. And Megan, thanks for pinch hitting this morning as a reader. Appreciate you. We've got a Thursday morning book group with this church. We get together from 10:30 to 12 every Thursday morning and read a different book. And right now we're reading our way through Matthew. And so chapter 12, I think, not this past Thursday, but 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, we looked at chapter 12 together, which is what Megan read from this morning. It was also, this has been a week that I particularly needed Sabbath. Didn't do a real good job with it, but so it was on my mind, so I thought we'll talk about it a little bit this morning. And this whole of chapter 12 is about Sabbath. But really, Sabbath is just kind of a way into a tension that Jesus struggles with as opposed to religious officials throughout his ministry. We can talk about this as a tension between kind of rules and grace. Walter Brueggemann, a professor of mine, you all have read some of his stuff I know before, would talk about this as a tension between the priestly and the prophetic tradition. The priestly tradition being the side that is concerned with rules, and they are there for a reason. We'll see that in just a minute. The prophetic tradition being someone like, and I apologize to all of you who are in TWJ because I'm going to use this example again. Y'all have heard me say this 1,000 times. A great example of this tension we find in the prophet Amos in the Hebrew Bible. Amos, in a passage you may recognize, talking to the priestly tradition, says to them, I hate, I despise your festivals. I take no delight in your solemn assemblies. He's critiquing the exercise of the religious rules. But let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. This is what is important to Amos, remembering that justice in the Hebrew Bible is almost always distributive justice, not retributive justice. Retributive justice being the kind of justice that says, somebody hurt me, I'm going to get them back. Retribution. When we read about justice in the Bible, we are almost always talking about distributive justice, the just and equitable distribution of things so that everyone has enough. And so the way that this tension shows up in our reading this morning is, we just heard two of them, but there are actually three different exchanges between Jesus and the religious officials around Sabbath rules, Sabbath laws. And the first is that Jesus and his disciples are observed walking along and grabbing grain to eat. Now, they're doing this on the Sabbath. And first off, say that doing that, walking along the edge of a field and taking grain, was not stealing. There are laws in the Hebrew tradition called gleaning laws. And the idea is that if you owned a big field of grain, you were permitted to harvest all of that grain except for the very edges of your field. And the reason you were not permitted to harvest the very edges of your own field is so that those who were hungry could do exactly what Jesus and his disciples are doing, which is to walk by and grab enough to eat, so that those who are hungry had a source of food. And that's what Jesus and his disciples are doing. They're gleaning. They're taking grain from the edge of the field. They just so happen to be doing it on the Sabbath. So Jesus responds first from history. He says David did something similar when he and his companions were hungry. Then he responds from the law itself. His point to the religious officials is, priests work on Sunday. Is it lawful for them to do it, but not for others? And then he quotes the prophets. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. His point is that the disciples were hungry, and while that prohibition from the Pharisees about not picking grain on the Sabbath was technically correct, the result would have been that the disciples were left hungry. And so this is the point. Pause and say this, I read this part. The law, as a rule to be obeyed in this instance, would have preserved the privilege and the disparity that kept some people well-fed and others hungry. But the Sabbath, not just in this instance, but the Sabbath in general, is meant to be a day of feasting. It is a day to set aside all of the work and toil that has to be done and to feast. And in fact, the way it's presented in the Hebrew Bible is that the experience of Sabbath is meant to be an experience of heaven. Like one day a week we set aside to act out heaven, even if we can't do it the other 6 days of the week. And so the Sabbath laws, as we find them in the Hebrew Bible, they don't just apply to the Jewish people, like people who said, this is my religion, so I'm going to follow the laws, everybody else can work on the Sabbath. The laws are written out to apply to slaves and slaveholders and household servants and livestock and animals. The idea is that everybody has a chance to rest, to experience Sabbath, to experience this foretaste of heaven. And so Jesus' point is that if Sabbath rules bar the poor who don't have another source of food from eating, then in that case the Sabbath rules are doing the exact opposite of what they're meant to do, which is to embrace everybody in the feast, this celebration of Sabbath. If you bar some people from eating, you are keeping them away from experiencing the Sabbath. Does that make sense? Okay, good. I'm going off notes. I'm not following my notes this morning, so I'll make sure I'm not missing something that, because I get nervous when I go away from my notes. So, and I think that's kind of a core question for our religious practice. What kind of religion are we after? A religion of rules that can often lead to judgment, separation, or a religion of renewal and new life, the transformation of ourselves and our community and our world? Is Sabbath a prohibition against doing something, or is it an invitation to experience something? And that's where the tension that we see in our reading this morning is. Second story is kind of like the first. Jesus is in the synagogue, and there's a man there who has a withered hand. A withered hand would be a symbol of disability, inability to take care of oneself, of weakness. And so the Pharisees raised the question to him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And part of the answer is no, because if healing were not prohibited on the Sabbath, then it means healers would have to work. Healers wouldn't get a day of rest themselves. They'd have to, work. And we run into this tension all the time. I grew up in South Carolina where we had blue laws and stuff was closed on Sundays, and you couldn't do a lot of things on Sundays. In some ways, that's a prohibition, a rule against making money on the Sabbath. But also, without those rules there is often not a chance for people to rest and experience Sabbath. And so the rules, let me be clear, the tension here, Jesus is at no point saying the rules don't matter. The rules are important because they are the very thing that are there to protect everyone. Without the Sabbath laws, you might find people forcing household servants, slaves, animals to work on the Sabbath. But the law is there to protect everyone. The tension comes up when those same laws are used to protect privilege at the expense of those in need. So in the synagogue thing with the man with the withered hand, if the man remains unhealed, he is bound by his disability. And Jesus' logic is that if Sabbath is a day to practice and experience heaven, a day to experience the wholeness and the goodness of creation, and that's what it's laid out to be in the first chapter of Genesis, that it's a day to experience blessing and freedom and compassion, withholding healing from this man keeps him from that full experience. And so Jesus' argument is that healing this man enables him to experience Sabbath. It is lawful to do good on the Sabbath because that's what heaven is. And so the issue here is not do we follow the rules or if Sabbath law itself is worthy of practice or any of the other laws. It is that tension that we find in religious practice between the need to maintain control, which often results in powerlessness for some and blessing for others. Are we using those religious laws to maintain situations of privation and bondage? And Jesus' answer to that is no. That Sabbath is an experience of grace. There's another story in this chapter we didn't read this morning. There's another healing. This time it's an exorcism, and Jesus casts out a demon from this man. Good news, but once again, the Pharisees challenge him. They see that healing as some kind of threat. Does this man cast out demons through the power of Satan? Jesus' response, can a house divided against itself not, will fall? The Pharisees are just a stand-in here for religious hierarchy. And this exposes this tension, ongoing tension in Jesus' ministry. Religious hierarchy has watched 3 blessings take place. The hungry are fed, the sick are healed, the oppressed are set free. And each time, the religious hierarchy has condemned that blessing because it took place on the Sabbath. It didn't follow the rules. And in each case, those rules are invoked to maintain hierarchy and privilege. And when that's the question with which Jesus is confronted, each time he chooses blessing. This experience of what he calls the kingdom of God, that is what we're talking about in Sabbath. It is experiencing heaven on earth, just a small little foretaste of that, but being intentional about trying to live and practice a small little bit of our time, our week or a bit of a day or something, as though heaven were already here on earth. It's all around us. We don't have to earn it. We just have to get to experience that blessing. We still find often, I think, that religion, especially the rules around religion, creates insiders and outsiders. It can create an atmosphere of judgment, of performance, of success and failure. It can create hierarchies, and rules can protect those hierarchies and privileges. Time and time again, Jesus lands on the side of putting the people first before the rules. Not throwing out the rules, understanding that the rules are there to protect people. And if the tension comes where the rules are not doing that, but instead are being used to oppress people, Jesus will always side with people over the rules. And I think it's easy to miss that point, but in all of these conversations we have in our own culture, our own society, our own discourse about the role that religion plays in things, to me it is an important reminder that Jesus always, every time, chooses people over the rules whenever those rules are being used to undermine the welfare, the spiritual health, the well-being of the people they are there to protect. Laws are meant to be a blessing, not a curse on people. And I know that in many ways, I recognize I'm preaching to the choir here. Sometimes it is just helpful to be kind of articulate things that are on my mind. But I also, again, going off notes here, and I'll wrap it up, I promise. But part of what I think, what I value about this congregation and having these kind of conversations, where I'm not necessarily challenging anybody's views here, because I expect most of us, you know this stuff. Sometimes I think it's helpful to work on how we articulate that. Because we're not just having conversations with people in here. We are having conversations with friends and family members and other people. And being able to articulate our understanding, I think, can be helpful, or it has been for me. So I hope sometimes that we could just have these conversations, recognizing I'm not trying to change anybody's mind or anything like that. I'm not trying to do that anyway. But sometimes it's just helpful to think through how we see things and see them play out in our own culture and articulate them. So I hope, and also a word of thanks to our Thursdays with Jesus group, because my previous church, I would lead a Sunday school class every Sunday, and it would always be what I was about to preach on, like, an hour later. And inevitably, people would have these great ideas and insights that I didn't have in my sermon. And so I'd sit there, preach my sermon, very frustrated that, like, oh man, I wish I had, so-and-so's ideas a week earlier to work them in. I can do that now with our Thursday group because we talk about stuff early enough that I get to incorporate those insights. So thank you to all of you who are part of that conversation and helped me kind of think about this morning. But yeah, that's all I got. Blessed be. How's that for an ending? Let's, why don't we stand? We'll sing together our doxology. We'll come up for communion in a minute, so you can either bring your offering up now or wait and drop it in the plates when you come up for communion in a minute. But let's go ahead and sing either way. Our own Presbyterian tradition, a little over 150 years ago, especially in the Southern Church, used to require a token before you could receive communion on Communion Sundays. It'd be announced ahead of time. You have to go make sure that you visited with the minister, and while we have a sacrament of confession, basically, got right with God, and then you get a token that allows you access to the table. You turn that in when you came up on Sunday. We've done all kinds of things, but to me, all of those run counter to the theology of this table that I see exhibited by Jesus throughout the Gospels, which is everyone is welcome. I don't see Jesus ever turning anybody away when he breaks bread. Come one, come all, gather at the table, and he is always expanding the table to make more room for more people. Because that's the experience of heaven. That's what the kingdom of heaven is like, and he talks about that. And so this is a chance, like this little moment, I hope we can experience Sabbath in the kingdom of heaven, which is, here's a place where everybody gets fed. Nobody is turned away from this table. And we get to come and eat together, break bread together. And I hope for you that is an experience of joy and blessing in Sabbath, because that's what this is meant to be. Jesus does that all through his ministry. He takes bread, he blesses it, he breaks it, and he shares it. And that is the experience of Sabbath. It's going to take me a second to break this bread, so don't wait on me. Come experience Sabbath. Our folks who are helping serve, come on up. Choir, if y'all want to come on up first so you can act. Oh, Paul, which is wine, which is juice?
Blue wine.
Saran